Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Victoria Gutierrez from Startup Chihuahua, and we're very glad to have this special session with Slavo Tuleya. He's one of the experts joining the expert network that we're just creating here in Chihuahua to help startups and businesses in technology to learn from the experts out there, right? So if you are a non-tech industry, don't worry because this session is gonna be like very friendly for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're a startup or a more traditional business. I think everyone could learn a lot from Slavo. And he has an amazing resume. So I will let him introduce himself. If you wanna turn on your camera, like Francisca, thank you so much. That would be
Go for it.
awesome for Slavo to meet all of you. The sessions will be hosted in English, but if you have any questions, you can put it on the chat, and at the end of the session, Slavo will answer some of them. Here says Alex that there for some reason he don't listen. So can you confirm that the audio is fine? Yeah.
Yes, it's
Okay.
fine.
The audio is fine.
So
Just it seems that Alex didn't turn on his microphone or the speakers, because if I look through the
yeah,
participant list, there is a problem.
yes. Okay, so
Try
I'll let
disconnecting
him
and connecting again, Alex. Maybe it's gonna work.
know. Yes. Uh I'm just letting him know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you suggest we start?
Yeah. So yes, sorry, I was just telling Alex that. And so here with you, Slavo. Thank you so much, Slavo. So this is your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna, for the nice introduction. So, as said, my name is Slavo, and the story of why I'm going to speak to you today is very interesting because I met with Anna, I think six weeks ago, or maybe 2 months ago, in San Francisco at a conference, and we randomly started speaking, and then we said, okay, maybe we should do a webinar and introduce the founders and company owners from Chihuahua to the theory of no code and how you can use that to build your business. So I'm happy to do this webinar for you. I will be speaking for about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. I will try to keep it very, very actionable for you so you can actually take something from this. Unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm sorry for that. But if you have a question in Spanish, then maybe Ana can do the translation, but it should be fine. So my general background is I always worked in innovation before I joined the venture capital firm in Central Europe. I come from Slovakia, a super tiny country. You probably don't know where it is. It's like right in the middle of Europe, part of European Union. But our bigger brother, Czech Republic, is more interesting. So one of the jobs that I did was I opened an innovation lab for Skoda. It's a car maker. I don't know if it's sold in Mexico, but it's part of the Volkswagen group. So I was opening innovation labs for them in Czech Republic, then in Israel, and then later on in China. After this, I moved on to venture capital, and I opened one of the biggest venture capital companies in Central Europe. And apart from that, I have a couple more businesses where we're either doing digitization for companies, or we help startup founders build their products faster and get them faster to the markets. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I will give you a little bit of a recap on what it actually means to be a founder in this year. What is no code, how it came about, and how can you use it? I have a couple more examples for you. I will show you what can be done and what cannot be done, and some of the learnings which one of my companies has with working with founders who are launching their MVPs. As said, if you have questions, just put them into the chat and I'll answer them at the end. So if I put my hat on as a founder this year, what does it actually mean? Well, the first thing that it might be scary if I am non-tech. What I mean by non-tech is if I don't have education that allows me to do technical development, so coding, being a programmer, writing either front end or back end. But we are not alone. There's actually majority of us are non-tech founders, and there was a study done in New York, and they were looking at the number of founders who have STEM education and who don't have STEM education. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, and there isn't a majority of tech founders, but sometimes in startup communities it feels like that there are only tech people and they're able to build something quickly. That's not the case. The second reality of being a founder in 2024 is the state of fundraising. It's fairly difficult to raise money in the market. So in North America, seed and angel rounds are still on the downslope, so less and less since the venture capital winter started in 2022. The same is for early stage. Okay, that's picking up a little bit, but not too much. It's still very, very stagnant, somewhere on the bottom. And if you look at the whole venture capital market, it looks something like this. Okay, so since 21 or 22, we have been going down, and it still hasn't recovered. In some areas it did. In Europe, we're feeling a little bit of a pickup, but this is mainly due to the fact that there is a lot of money available from the government or European Union initiatives. So what does this mean? There is less dollars, less money in the market for founders to have. It means that venture capital has more expectation towards founders. So in order to get money and raise money, we have to show more traction or maybe more meat. We have to show that there is actually demand for our product. And that goes hand in hand with capital efficiency expectations, meaning we have to spend money well when we get it. Because a lot of startups which raised money in 2019, maybe later on, it was super easy for them to start spending a lot of money right away. And it means that you shorten your runway and you have to raise again very, very soon. So capital efficiency is the name of the game. So when you're building a new product, what are the 3 core competencies? The first one is to identify an opportunity. That's logical. And that's something that every entrepreneur has to do for themselves. The opportunity has to be big enough, the problem has to be big enough, and the market has to be big enough. Then you have to figure out a solution. Okay, so you have to come up with a solution to that problem which you identified in the market. And then you have to build it. So you have to execute it. You have to put it together and you have to launch it. The question is, where are you most likely to fail? Or where are you most likely to go, to make a bad turn, maybe to spend too much money? Well, from our experience, you're most likely to fail in solution definition or in execution. And let me tell you why. So the first reason is that if you design a solution which is too heavy and is too big, it's going to take you a long time to develop it. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and you will not be nimble enough to get feedback from the market. And then the second part, execution, well, you can fail there by not using the ideal tools which are available in the market today, meaning you spend a lot of time and money doing it. Then you will again run out of money before you have time to iterate. The best startups, they're able to iterate and change their product based on the feedback that they get from the market. So how can you reduce, the question is, how can you reduce the risk in these 3 steps? Well, there are 2 traditional methods for risk reduction, we call them risk reduction methods. One of them is Lean Startup. Maybe you heard about it. There's this blue book called Lean Startup by Eric Ries, written, 2010, 2008. Or there is design thinking. Majority of non-tech founders, they usually lean more toward design thinking because it tells us, let's do a lot of research, let's test before actually building the real thing. And when we get to actually building the real thing, we should be somehow sure that it's going to work out. Lean Startup, on the other hand, tells us something completely different. It tells us that we should be super quick to the market with something extremely simple. And then based on the feedback that we get, we either kill the idea or we change the idea and iterate in this loop of launching it, getting feedback, learning something, and doing it all over again. The problem with Lean Startup for non-tech founders is that, you cannot build it, right? You don't know how to do it. You don't have the education. You don't know how to code. You cannot put the the solution together in order to launch it and to get some feedback and to iterate based on that. So you always went in the direction of design thinking. Well, there is a way now, and the way is called no code. No code is something I'm going to introduce in the next couple of slides. And why I think it's important because it's allowing you to do lean startup and you can actually move quickly. And it prevents heartbreaks. And we say that heartbreaks are a good thing because if you are able to learn quickly that your idea is bad, you haven't worked on it for 2 years and you haven't fallen in love with it. So you're actually able to move forward faster. So what is this no-code thing and where did it come about? I have a short history, and the whole no-code thing started in 1980s. And we actually bought this book on eBay, I think last year. It was printed in like 1982 or something. It came super old, smelly book. But the idea of the book was that the number of computers is growing so quickly that there isn't enough programmers or people who are able to use them because of the super fast growth. And of course, here in this book, there are no code tools or nothing super special. But the idea of, okay, let's figure out a way how people without technical knowledge can actually use computers, it's a great direction. And then the later 80s came with Microsoft Excel. Okay, it still looks the same, only with colors, but it was the first time when you could actually manipulate data without having to write code, right? So you either graphed it or you use a simple formula. Then in the 90s, it was cool to do websites. No, everybody wanted to have their own homepage, but in order to have your own homepage, you need to code HTML. And if you didn't know how to do HTML, well, your option was to use GeoCities. It's a startup which was in the height of the dot-com bubble, so around 2000. It was acquired by Yahoo, and it also took a very long time until it died. So it died in 2009. But it helped you generate websites like this, or like this, or my favorite one is this one, right? So everybody wanted to have their own web page. So that was the beginning of no code in the 90s. Then the 2000s came and WordPress came. Actually, WordPress was made was discovered, or like the person who put it together was based here in Houston, and I'm in Houston, Texas today. And I only learned this yesterday that WordPress founders are from Texas. So that's very interesting thing. But WordPress still looks very much the same as it did. It allows you to do, again, static pages, maybe add a form. But a big shift happened in around later 2000s. And that was when you could actually do no-code e-commerce. So all of a sudden, it was not only about static homepages, but you could actually do e-commerce. So set up your store, put some products on it, have a checkout process, and so on and so on. And Wix, and of course, there are others, but this was a big shift. And then 10 years went about, and we are here when we are doing things which we call beyond website. So things which are more complex than a store or more complex than a simple presentation website. We are actually now doing web applications. So things like marketplaces, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what no code is capable of today. For example, this tool which I have here is called Flutterflow. It even allows you to do mobile applications. And again, you're doing something which is called visual programming. So it's still programming, but it's very visual. I always use a Lego example to show what no code is. And I use this little helper, although some people do not agree with me. But so you go from, no code is very simple bricks. It sometimes mixes a little bit with low code. And real code would be a 3D printer where you actually design something and you do it very much in 100% replication of what you wanted to do. The reason why some people don't like this example is because you still use the same mental frames and logic for building in no code, but you're not writing code. So you are not writing, as you imagine, typical code, but you are doing it visually. So you still have to have the tech, I wouldn't call it technical, but you need to have this imagination where you can imagine what the rules will be, what the connection will be, but everything is done visually. No code is very big because a lot of venture capital money is being put into it. And I would say the best example of a no-code tool is bubble.io. Maybe that's something which you've heard of. It's a tool which raised the most money, over $100 million, and they are everywhere. They have a lot of marketing money. You will see a lot of tools, and once the cookies on the internet find you, you will see a lot of different tools which are in the no-code space right now because a lot of money is going into it. So now we know what the state of the market is today. We know a little bit what no-code is and what's the history. How should you start? Okay, so let's imagine I have an idea and I want to build, let's make it easy. I want to make a real estate marketplace. So I want to make a marketplace where I will have some property, so some houses, flats, and then I will have some people who want to buy them. We always say that we need to have some kind of a before start checklist. So I need to validate if the market is big enough, if the problem is big enough, and if I know what my core hypothesis is. Okay, so on the next example I have, okay, Uber is the typical example, right? So their hypothesis was that people will be willing to step into the cars of strangers and let them drive them to their destination. And that was the core hypothesis which they needed to validate with the first MVP. And based on my experience, I always see that for people, it's very difficult to actually figure out what the minimum viable product is. They always make it too complicated. They add too many features, whereas it's only about solving this first problem at once. The second thing that we have to think about is to identify who are the innovators. So who are the first people that are going to use it? And I sometimes call them people who have the biggest problem right now and who are looking most for the solution. So they are usually the first people that work with us. And coming back to the prototype that you want to build, I was just having a discussion yesterday here in Houston, and we said, it's not that big of a problem to build something. The problem is to figure out what you want to build. So what to actually put in there, how many features to put in there, or even more difficult, what not to put in there. And that's the more important thing. Okay, so at the beginning, we always want to go and test the first hypothesis, then maybe add another one, but we really want to do it iteratively. So what we want to avoid is building something for 2 years, then putting it out and figuring out that nobody really wants it. And this brings me to another point, which is thinking clarity. Okay, so if I'm going to build a real estate marketplace, I want to figure out how am I going to be different than the current competition? Am I going to focus it only on a particular target group? Is this target group having a big enough problem that they would be willing to use my solution, right? So I need to have this clearness of thinking. And then it's only about setting KPIs, timeline, and kind of going through the problems which we are solving. Where does the problem happen with non-tech founders? Well, non-tech founders have a problem because they can figure out the market, they can figure out the product. How are they going to build it? And no-code offers a way, and these are pretty much the 3 options that a non-tech person, as a non-tech founder, but also a non-tech business owner who wants to make an app for their customers, you have really 3 options. So you either do the thing on your own, meaning you have to learn something about no-code, try a tool. You hire someone, but it's difficult to do because you don't know how to speak to tech people and you cannot really say if they're good or bad. So it's fairly difficult. The third option is that you subscribe to a team which is going to do it for you, or an agency, or freelancers, okay, depending on how much you want to manage them. To come back to the first point, to do it on your own, my suggestion is, if you are a non-tech founder and you really want to build something, it takes it makes sense to invest 3 or 4 weeks into like learning the basics of 1 or 2 tools to kind of understand the environment, what it is about, how it works, and only then to go and hire someone to do it for you, because you will have a much deeper understanding. So I'm not saying that no code is here to solve everything for non-tech founders, only for those who are willing to actually learn it, how to use it. So it's not like, you will dictate to ChatGPT what you want to build and it's going to happen. It's not going to happen this way, especially if it's something more complex, but it's giving you a way how to have certain technical understanding before you actually start hiring technical people. And I think this is the most important thing. So what are the tools to use? Well, maybe you've listened to this right now and you're like, okay, I'm going to use no code. Where do I start? Well, this is the market. So that's pretty complicated. There's loads of tools for everything and new ones are coming out. I'm going to break it down for you into 3 different categories. I call them the 3 levels of no code. Level number 1, we've had a customer. It was a accounting firm. Typical accounting firm, they're doing bookkeeping, so the traditional stuff. They wanted a customer portal which would send to their customers information about, submit your documents, here is the tax return, here is the VAT return, and so on and so on. Level 1 of no code is to use tools which are existing and you kind of join them together. So you use a CRM, you use a messaging service, and then you use Make, which is something which is making connections in between. No programming, just some logic. Here are some clients, here I have to send them something based on a trigger, and here is a tool which is going to connect everything. The second level is where you build your own app, but you're not thinking about the design. You're not thinking about what is front end, what is back end, what is the logic in the middle. And this was a client which is producing tiny homes. It's a factory. They're building, 20 homes a month in a factory. And they wanted to have CRM and they wanted to have some time tracking. And again, this was a little bit more complicated than level 1. So you're not only using tools which are available in the market and making connections between them to exchange information and create some outcomes, but here you actually design your own tool a little bit. And for that, we use Glide, and that's a very nice tool to get started with. Simple enough that you don't have to think about too many technical details, but powerful enough to actually build nice solutions. But you will not have your own design in this type of tool. And then the third level of no code, which we call the most, I would say, breakthrough, is where you actually start making complicated things in no code way, so much faster and much cheaper. You usually have a separated front end and back end. You can plug in no code front end to a coded back end or the other way around. You have pixel perfect design. So whatever your designer creates, you can actually replicate into no code. And you can start adding custom components, coded components, and things like that. So if you wanted to check out a couple of these tools, I'll share the presentation with you, but these are the names, or these are the names that you can Google for and see for yourself if it works. What I think is the main argument why no code makes sense and why no code has a place for the future is that all of a sudden it's allowing non-tech people to start building things. And this is very important because there are more non-tech people. And if we allow them to build something, they will be able to bring in interesting concepts to the market. And I think now is really the right time when these solo founders will start building billion-dollar companies. And that's also what Elon Musk said, but I think there's a couple more people who are saying this, that if we have the tools at hand, we are not limited by the ability to hire and manage technical people. So you might be wondering, what can you build in no code? So let me give you some examples, and I have one special one for you. So this was a client with whom we worked recently. It's a marketplace. It's in Czech language. It's a marketplace for people who have land, people who are building tiny homes, and people who want to buy a tiny home. Okay, so it's actually a platform where you do search, where you do properties, where you can get your financing options. So a fairly complex web application with pixel perfect design developed in a couple of weeks. So that's the strength. Then I have another example which we did. It was a marketplace for Guatemala. So it's in Spanish. I had to really look for something that's in Spanish to help you. You can search for it. It's called Mapi. And this is a marketplace which allows us to again search for properties, rent properties. I think we have some background noise from someone. Oh, no, it's fine. So it's again a marketplace which has a huge database on the back. It's aimed at real estate agents, and for people who are searching for stuff and they can make the connection. So again, a couple of users, fairly complicated, but again with pixel perfect design, database on the back, and you're able to plug it into whatever you need to. You also have a custom search function, interesting. Custom search function allows you to draw into the map. We still have some background noise. Anna, maybe you can.
Yeah, I'll check here. Sorry. Who's
Right?
the one?
No, I think it's fine. No,
Yeah,
it's
I
good.
think.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
sorry.
Okay, so just to illustrate a little bit the strength of where you can actually get. And the interesting thing is that, or the learnings which we're having is that it's not so much only about founders who are finding this interesting that you can all of a sudden start building complicated web applications with 3 times or 4 times the speed. But it's the bigger corporations and the bigger enterprise level clients who figured it out very quickly, because for them it's like, oh wow, right now we have either 3 times the amount of capacity of what our technical people can do, or we can fire 2/3 of them because we'll be able to save some money, right? So they very quickly realized that this is a money saving measure or increase in speed. And sometimes I get the question of, how much cheaper is it? Well, nominally, they cost the same, because you need to have people who are at home with this, and we have 20 employees who are working in no code, and most of them are full stack developers. But those are the full stack developers who are very open-minded to switch into no code and realize that they can do things 2 or 3 times faster. And this is the important thing, right? So the people cost the same pretty much, but they can do much more, 3 times as much, maybe 4 times as much as they would normally do in traditional code. And that's where the great saving happens. Last year, we worked with a lot of founders, and we were building minimum viable products and prototypes for them, for some even production applications, things that scaled, things that had a lot of traffic in it. And I always get the question of, what are the learnings? What can you reflect on? And some of the learnings which I have, we have worked with so many people that there are patterns, and these patterns are interesting. And I'm going to share a couple of them with you. I think you'll find it interesting. So I say the rumor is true. No code is here to stay. No code has gone through a lot of validation. We've seen very nice examples of stuff being built with it. So it's here to stay. The rumor is also true that code is here to stay, because at some point, you have to add custom features. So there will still be place for code. But I always say that all of a sudden, people who are actually amazing developers, they can go and solve bigger problems than building web applications. The number one problem, which I see with founders, is scope creep. So they come to us with an idea, and as we start developing it, it kind of becomes bigger and bigger, and they have more ideas, more features. Let's add these colors, let's add this feature, that feature. And scope creep means that it's not very voluntary. It happens over time as the project goes forward, but it's getting bigger and bigger, and it means that you are launching later and later. And the later you're launching, the further you are from an actual feedback from the market. Then the second thing I noticed is founders are afraid of feedback. So you have your amazing idea, you fell in love with the idea, you don't really want to launch it, because what if people don't like it? And it means that they are afraid of feedback. So they're kind of pushing away the date of, are we launching soon? Nah, let's, change things, let's add things, but let's let's not be too fast to launching it, because what if the customers don't like it? Sometimes they never launch. Then I have another group of founders who think that they can plan exactly to the precise 1 cent, euro cent or dollar cent, the amount that it's going to cost them to build a technical solution or digital product. And I say this is impossible. This is impossible when you're building a new idea, because with every iteration you get more ideas, things to remove, things to add. You're doing a lot of iterations. You cannot have a fixed price for developing something, especially when it's a new idea. They ask me a lot, is custom code possible with no code? Yes, there are 100%. It's possible to do custom code, but it all depends on the kind of tool that you use. So there are tools like Bubble, which are closed monolithic apps where you cannot do much of custom things, and you cannot even export code. That's tough. But there are some better ones. Number one thing is distribution, and this is what separates the successful founders and the non-successful founders. And as I already hinted a couple of minutes ago, it's not about building the actual thing, but it's about finding the customers. So let's say 3 of us here started building exactly the same thing. Who will be successful? Well, not the person who has the best solution, but the person who is able to attract the most customers into using that solutions. So there has been many amazing products which weren't successful because they weren't able to attract the customer group. So this is something that I believe founders have to be thinking about more and more, and much more. They should be focusing on it much more than they are on the actual technical aspect of their solution. How are they going to get it to the customer? Savings, we see, say 60%, I would say, compared to traditional code. And I want to close off with this slide. And this is what I always tell founders at the end when I do mentoring. Why should you care about no code? And I have 5 reasons for it. Well, if you are technical, this is not for you. If you're able to code, go ahead, do it the way that you like doing it. Maybe you don't have to waste time with learning something new. Feel free. If you're non-technical and you have limited budget, well, if you go the traditional development way, you will have increased development costs, which is a problem. It will take you longer to launch, which is a problem. You will have less agility to adapt to the changes and to feedback which you have from the market, and that is a problem as well. And coming back to what I said at the beginning, you will decrease the investor appeal because you will not be an efficient allocator of the resources which you have. So let's imagine you have $50,000 angel investment, or maybe $100,000. Well, if you waste it all, like the whole thing on development, you will not have enough money to do marketing, to do go-to-market, to do a couple of iterations, and so on. And then sometimes I get the question of, how do investors look at it, that it's built in no code? Well, they don't really care. We have startups which raised money building their thing in no code. It's just about selecting the right tools. And the final thing that I want to close off with, and then I'm going to answer a couple of questions, is products right now, they don't really outgrow no code. So back then it used to be a problem that you couldn't really scale it. So if you're using Bubble, it's difficult to scale. On one hand, it's expensive. On the other, it's difficult to actually turn it into something really huge. Right now, you don't really have these problems anymore. But it all depends on the tools which you select. So that was a short intro on no code from my side, and then let me answer a couple of the questions which we have here. So. Okay, I'll go from the end. If I invest in no-code solutions, won't I end up spending more to rebuild everything with code as my business grows? Excellent question. Excellent question. And it's important to address this question, because you might end up with this problem if you choose the wrong tools. So there are three generations of no code. The first generation I showed you as those tools where you could only build a website, Squarespace, Wix, and so on. First generation, yes, you can, arrive at a problem. Second generation tools, especially Bubble.io, great builder, but the problem is scaling. So you will have to eventually redo it into something because it's monolithic app, it's closed in one environment, and you cannot do any export, right? So you are vendor locked and you cannot do export, you cannot plug it into your own database, your own backend, and so on. And now we have third generation tools like the ones which I showed you. So for front end, WeWeb or Flutterflow. So those are just the front ends, and you can add custom code. You can even export code, which is an amazing function. So even in the future, if you get to a point where you think that you have to add a lot of custom features, you can export the code. So for example, WeWeb is based on Vue.js, so you can continue in Vue.js. On the backend side, let's say you're using Supabase, which is very similar to Postgres, the Postgres database, where you can code things into it. You will not. It's very similar to Firebase, so you will not have that limitation. Or you go with Xano, which is a full no-code backend, also fairly scalable. So there isn't that problem anymore. It used to be so, but there isn't that problem anymore. So for example, our experience with WeWeb is, they're running, I don't know, 50,000 apps on it. Some of them have, they're working with multiple backends and they're super fast. And what is also great about WeWeb is that they're moving to a serverless functionality or infrastructure from next month. And that's going to make it super, super, super quick. So this is not a problem anymore. Okay, so here we have a question from Yahoo. He's asking, I'm interested in a no-code tool that can give me both a web application and a mobile application. Do you know something that you can recommend? Yes. There are two ways of doing it. The first way of doing it is asking yourself a question: why do you actually need a mobile application? Okay, and this question might be answered in the following way. You either answer it and say, I would love to have it on App Store because it's cool. And the second reason you can give me why it makes sense to have a mobile application is to have real-time push notifications. If you don't need real-time push notifications, then you can build a progressive web app, so PWA, and this can be built both in WeWeb or it can be built in Flutterflow. And then the whole other approach how you can do it is you can do a web application with a progressive web app, and then you wrap it in a wrapper, and this wrapped progressive web app you publish to the store. So there are a couple of wrappers which you can use for Flutterflow. I think Flutterflow actually has its own, and WeWeb is using some third-party wrappers. Will the recording be available? I guess yes. Okay. Okay, limit. So there is another question. What are the common misconceptions about no-code tools, and how can we address the fears of those who worry about limitations and security? Great question. So let's first look at the limitations. Where would I not use no-code? I would not use it to do a software that is managing, I don't know, airplanes. Okay, I wouldn't use it in the cockpit because that's something where you need something that is extremely responsive. I would probably not use it for high-speed algorithmic trading. I would not be building this type of app in it because, again, we have to realize that no code is still a certain abstraction above typical code, right? So there will be some speed limitations. They will not affect a typical user, but if you would be doing something which is, a high-speed algorithmic trading, it's probably not going to work. Security, okay, that's another great question. And there are a couple of options. So, for example, WeWeb right now allows you to actually run an instance on your AWS. So it will be fully separated from WeWeb as such, which is amazing because it doesn't give you the vendor lock, which I don't know, Bubble gives you. Okay, so Bubble only allows you to run their application purely in their environment, whereas with these new tools, you can actually take that away, and this problem is solved. And the proof of the fact that this makes sense is that corporations are starting to use it and they run it on their servers so they can run it locally. And that's the important thing. Okay. We have another question. Okay. So an app, lowest, so money-wise, how much does it actually cost to do an app? I usually tell founders that if they don't have $10,000, they shouldn't do it, right? But that's like the bare minimum to build an MVP or to build something that you can actually take to the market. You can possibly reduce that by learning some of it yourself, okay, doing some parts yourself, or learning enough about the tools that you will be able to manage freelancers. Because I'm pretty sure in South America, you can get relatively cheap freelancers who will be able to help you with no code. I'm 100% sure about that. The process is always complicated when you have to manage them. Because, as I said, there are two parts to building a product. Figuring out what to build, that's the important part, which you have to get right, and then actually building it. Once you've figured out what you want to build and what are the simple steps, the simple iterations, then you have to manage those people, and this can be sometimes fairly difficult. Okay, so you always have to weigh, am I going to spend time, learn, or am I just going to hire someone who is more maybe more expensive, but they actually know the process and they will also help me figure out what I should put in the MVP from their experience and what I shouldn't put there. Okay, we have someone who is raising their hand, or they are no longer raising their hand, but feel free.
I think you wrote it in the chat. Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Jorge. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was raising my hand. Well, about my question is because I'm a non-tech founder. I studied finances and I was studying in a bootcamp for full stack developer. But for some reasons with academy, I needed to switch to another career, in which case I have choose data science because I'm pretty interested in the IA technology. But what do you recommend for us? Because what I saw, I like to use a lot of tools such as the most common is Gemini, ChatGPT, and I don't remember the Copilot from Microsoft. But what I use them to fix or make developments in my code when I was learning to for the web coding. But I saw that those tools are useless if you don't understand some kind of the logic behind them. Because I detected when I put some codes in those, those are generative AIs, but I saw that even those technologies still have some errors, and that's that's pretty fair because they are pretty new yet. But what do you recommend for us if we want to get some kind of background that supports our knowledge? Because in my case, I have knowledge and experience in businesses, in the side of the finances and negotiations. But I want, because I like a lot of this, I would like to have some more experience in the technology field.
There is a nice thing online. It's called 100 Days of No Code. It's like an online accelerator kind of thing. And it sends you tasks every week or every other day, something like that. But it sends you simple tasks, what to do, and you're kind of learning different technologies of no code, because you are very similar like me. For me, it's important to have technical overview and maybe understand the technical architecture. Okay, so right now, I can for an app, I can design what the front end will be, so I can choose the technology. For me, the decision is usually very simple. I always go with WeWeb because for me it's important to have 100% pixel perfect design. So whatever the designer creates, I can have. That's important. But then I have to figure out the logic of, okay, what type of backend are we using? So I would definitely look into the tutorials or academies of Xano, Xano, Xano.com. It's a no-code backend, maybe Supabase, and maybe Make, which is the interconnector between everything. And to get a simple understanding of how these tools work, I think you already, you will not be building stuff in it yourself, but you will have enough technical overview to understand if somebody is explaining to you, maybe a development company or maybe a freelancer, you will understand what they're talking about. So I would start there. And with regards to ChatGPT and stuff, I use it also because right now when ChatGPT 4 can search the internet, it's great for explaining features of particular tools.
Yeah.
So I use it for research, definitely. And then also it's relatively easy to plug it into all these, we're using, for example, ChatGPT in one of those solutions which I showed you to generate the descriptions of properties, right? So it takes the location, size, number of bedrooms, and it generates some text. So you can plug in a lot of these things together. So that's definitely good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, let's check out a couple more of these questions. When should you create an app from scratch using traditional development? I don't know. I don't recommend it anymore, or I don't do it. I'm pretty sure there are. I mean, if you're doing a deep tech startup and the technology is something core, obviously you'll have to code it, right? Or let's say you want to do a no code development platform where others will be building something in. I mean, you have to code it, obviously, right? So it depends on your use case. But if you're a non-tech founder, I would say it's fairly uncommon that you will be actually building something in traditional code. And the last question, which I have here, and this is also an amazing question, copyright tips while hiring someone to develop an idea. There are two ways to look at it. The tool is not going to steal your idea. If you, for example, look at Bubble and their copyright policy and privacy policy, you're protected, you're fine. The only problem is, what if Bubble went bankrupt, right? Because all your IP is in Bubble and you're paying for access. And if Bubble goes bankrupt, you're finished. So therefore, you have to choose a tool where you're actually able to export code. And this is Flutterflow or WeWeb. So those newer ones. So they give you that sense of security that you can take it. Now, the second way to look at it, when you're hiring someone, it's fairly standard that, and this is again, if you're looking for low cost stuff, freelancers, and there it's more difficult to protect IP and copyright because, are you going to chase them somewhere around South America or India? Probably not, right? But if you're hiring, let's say, more reputable development agencies, they're fine to sign an NDA. It's usually not a problem. But you have to realize one thing, and it comes back to one of the slides which I showed you. It's all about distribution, right? So if you give me your idea and I copy it one-to-one, who has better distribution? Well, if you know the market, then you know people who have the problem, you will be better because you will have the distribution. So sometimes we used to say that ideas are worthless, execution is key. I think we can change it right now. Ideas are great, but distribution is what makes the difference if you're successful or you're not successful. So that's pretty much it. So I think we answered all the questions. I suggest that you connect with me. Feel free to do it on LinkedIn. I also do a newsletter for non-tech founders. Feel free to subscribe. Every Sunday I'm sending a couple of tips how to build as a non-tech founder. And if more questions come up, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to answer questions of people when they want to build something and or they try to do it themselves. I like to give them recommendations on how to build it. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for listening.